All right, guys, welcome back into another NFL props video, touching on the top prop bets here for week 2. So I'm going to be going ahead and using the ODDSJAM Sportsbook view. Again, I like this view a bunch just because it gives you all the game information really that you want to be able to make some educated decisions for your prop bet. Okay, I'll be going through the prop bets that I like, the player prop bets that I like as well. But for example purposes, like this Minnesota Eagles game, you can see all the players that are currently questionable. Maybe a player is ruled out. Like a nice little thing that you can do is we got some DeAndre Swift props on PrizePicks before the Kenneth Gainwell news dropped that he was going to be out. And so you can kind of make an educated guess for yourself. It's like, all right, who benefits the most if this said player is like questionable and sits? That's one thing that you can do. It also, tells you the weather, location, and what I like as well, where the game is being broadcasted. Okay, that is actually pretty nice for anyone that is gambling because they want to see what is going on. But I kind of just want to do a game-by-game breakdown, and then at the end of the video, I'm going to show you guys what are my favorite prop bets. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a peek at this Los Angeles Chargers versus Tennessee Titans game. So looking at the injury news right now, we do know that DeAndre Hopkins currently questionable. And then also, while Tajay Spears was questionable as well, he has since been taken off. That is very interesting there. On the flip side, we look at the Chargers. We got Austin Eckler currently questionable. It's like typical stuff here for the Los Angeles Chargers. They can never, ever have their team at full strength. So I do find this line to definitely be interesting. Okay, the Chargers always seem to keep teams in it, and I would say if Eckler is indeed ruled out, we would maybe see this line drop to 2 points, and maybe even the score would drop as well. Now, I do think it's worth pointing out here that when we look at the DVP here, the Chargers, obviously last week going against 2 and then Miami Dolphins, they would actually be the best matchup for an opposing quarterback. And then the Titans as well, kind of an easy matchup as well on paper there. Obviously, Derek Carr was able to be pretty efficient as a player last week. We look at the running backs, almost the exact opposite there for the Titans. So maybe Austin Eckler, Josh Kelly, maybe they struggle. I think that was more of the Saints just not being a running team, being more pass heavy, just given their talent. And then the Chargers middle of the road. And so just taking a quick look at the props that we have available for the Tennessee Titans right now, we have Derrick Henry at 79.5 rushing yards. Now the question is whether or not we should be taking any prop bets for him. And the answer there would be maybe. I do want to call it the snap counts for them. So we had Tajay Spears, who actually played in 54% of the team snaps, and also Derrick Henry only played in 47.6% of the snaps. Now, the reason why I want to call this out is Derrick Henry has always been game flow dependent. That's like we know that. I don't think the 2.9 for the point spread is going to be enough for us to really change anything. I don't think they're going to be playing from behind or anything like that to the point where we're going to see Derrick Henry's snap count be that low again. And to me, I think it's worth pointing out that it really did not feel like Derrick Henry only played 47.9% of the snaps. Like if you were watching that game, it didn't feel like that at all. Now, there were some situations where both Spears and Henry were on the field at the same time. But yeah, man, watching that game, it really, I was shocked at that number. I was like, what? Because he still had 18 opportunities. And maybe they look at that back and say, man, that was a mistake, because really at the start of the game, Derrick Henry was just feasting, which was kind of weird. It was kind of the flip side of what he typically does as a runner, right? Like where as the game goes on, he's a grinder, and then the defense is kind of wear out. No, it was the exact opposite last week. But this is honestly, it could be a better matchup than it seems. You look at Miami, they're not really a team that's trying to rush the football, I would say, which is obviously the matchup that the Chargers had last week. And Mostert should have had another touchdown, a receiving touchdown, but Ahmed, it was like a weird play. Ahmed motioned, and then they swung it out to Mostert. They had both running backs in, and Ahmed just whiffed on a block. It would have been a walk-in touchdown. So that being said, there were plays there for running backs to make. So yeah, Derrick Henry, I don't mind him for over 79.5 rushing yards. I was actually hoping we would get a lower number, but I just don't see him not being more involved. That being said, maybe this Chargers defense is bad. Like, we don't know for sure if the Chargers defense is bad or if it was just the Miami Dolphins offense is going to be pretty darn good. I would say like this here for Nick Folk, kind of interesting, I would say. Just given the fact that they were able to get the ball into scoring position a lot. Ryan Tannehill just had a terrible game. And so if you think Ryan Tannehill is going to have another terrible game, maybe you want to do over 4.5 punts. That is a lot, though. I'm not touching that. And then for what it's worth, like, he should have had a much better game. Like, there's a couple passes where I wrote it off as rust. Okay. Like, we know who Ryan Tannehill is as a quarterback. We have seen it. He played one of his worst games as a professional quarterback, and I just write that off to him not practicing or not playing during the pre. So there, I would rather be able to stack this, but there is something there, I think. It is worth noting right now, he's only projected to get 204. So probably one that you're just staying away from there. Let's go ahead and get into the Chargers now. And the first prop worth mentioning is going to be Justin Herbert. Guys, passing yards, we're not really getting an edge there. Okay, so just that's unfortunate, but we're just not getting an edge there. And then for Keenan Allen, we're not really getting much either. With Austin Eckler currently questionable, I was wondering if we were going to get a good Keenan Allen prop. We are not. That being said, I do think I'd rather do a receptions-based prop, but I do think if Austin Eckler were to miss time in this game, I'm not really expecting that. I'm just full disclosure, but I do think Keenan would even get more force-fed than he did previous. And I'm not too worried about this matchup just yet. Like I said, Derek Carr was able to have a good game against them. I think this pass defense is going to continue to be poor like they were last year. Really, the only way I'm going out of my way to do this though would be with like a game stack. Maybe you do Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, maybe Ryan Tannehill over passing yards if you think that game is going to be a little bit better. For me, for right now, this is probably, besides the kicking prop, it's probably the best prop in the game, although none of these feel too strong. So let's go ahead and get into the next game. All right, so we have my Green Bay Packers versus the Atlanta Falcons. Now, I do find it interesting that the Falcons are 1.7 favorites here. That's interesting for sure. And look at the game total. The game total is very low for this game, 40 points. And so that probably tells us that maybe some of the bets that we're going to get out there, and we're not really getting any for the Green Bay Packers, full disclosure right now. That's because of this Christian Watson news. He was the DNP on Thursday as I'm recording this. You look at Aaron Jones, he was the DNP as well. I kind of don't expect those two to play. Okay, hamstring injuries typically take like 3.5 weeks to recover, so that's definitely a worry, right? And Romeo Doubs currently questionable. Now, he did play. And why did he play? Well, because his injury literally took place like 3.5 weeks prior to that game. So do expect him to play. But I really think the biggest stuff that we didn't take away from here, Gary and Quay Walker currently questionable. If those two sit, that's going to lead to, I think, more production for that running back room. The Falcons offense should be able to benefit from that as well. And now looking at the props that we have available, I do want to call this one out. This opened at 64.5 for the rushing yards. And that was one that you would be looking at the under with. Now, probably not too much. Desmond Ridder, he was the worst starting quarterback I thought going into the season, and he sure looked like it last week. I loved all the people saying that he was going to be an upgrade from Marcus Mariota. I'm like, he literally is like a copy of Marcus Mariota, so slightly worse, right? If he's a copy, I'm not saying he's like 2.0. No, he's a copy. He looked bad. And just between those two, like, we're just not getting that much, okay? No edges really in this game with them adjusting the rushing yards prop for Bijan Robinson. Now, that being said, the Green Bay Packers were a bad or easy matchup, I guess, for running backs last week in terms of scoring. Now, rushing yards, definitely not. Like, only 63 rushing yards given up. Total, though, obviously, Justin Fields was able to rush the football a decent amount as well. They were perfectly happy to let Fields throw the football. I think that's what's going to happen again this week with Ridder. So, question is, will the Green Bay Packers be able to shut down the running game? I'm not really sure. And I did find the snap share to be extremely interesting for the Falcons there. Bijan still played 63.5 total snaps in that game, with Tyler Algier playing 55.8. So we did see them on the field a little bit together. I just find the line interesting. I'd rather do like total yards if we were getting that. But for the most part, it does seem prop wise we're probably staying away. Although if I were to force a bet in there, it would be him, Bijan Robinson, over rushing yards. So again, as I'm recording this right now, we're not getting any Green Bay Packers props. Unfortunately, that's because of the Aaron Jones news. That's because of the Christian Watson news that we are waiting on. It should be harder for them to throw the football, although I didn't really see the Atlanta defense hinder Bryce Young too much. Bryce Young, just, rookie quarterback, wasn't able to be that good in his first start. That's all it is. And I do think it's worth calling out, guys. Luke Musgrave had the role that we thought he would. He played in 75% of the snaps. If he gets that snap share again, I think that he's going to be able to have a good game. Now, he had 4 targets, should have caught all 4 of them, kind of ran a route wrong, and just didn't have that good of ball skills. He really had terrible ball skills, but I kind of tacked that to rookie nerves and whatnot. Should have had a much better game. So if we get some good lines out there, I would say really anything under these stats that we were getting, I would actually like that a decent amount. All right, so moving on into the next game here, we got the Colts versus the Texans. Looking at the Texans side of the football, I want to call this out. Noah Brown on the IR with a groin injury. So in season-long leagues, guys be looking to pick up Tank Dell. I know he was drafted in some leagues, but he might have been dropped, and he was obviously someone, if you guys follow this channel, was pretty darn good in the preseason, made me look good. So yeah, just be on the lookout for him, because when we pull up the snaps, we'll see Noah Brown 67.5, okay, and then Tank Dell 48.1, and I think that number is just going to go direct to Tank Dell. He looked good. I mean, he still looked like what we liked out of him out of the preseason. The interesting thing worth noting here is Dameon Pierce, 45% of the snaps. It's like they were trying to lose, I swear, because he got the football, guys, and when he, like, early on, first down for most of it, and he looked good doing it, and then they just went away from the run. It was strange. Now, I know we're only seeing a 3.5 average. Guys, it really didn't feel like. And I don't see how they're not watching that film and saying, man, our workload for Pierce was correct. No, they're watching that saying, we need to get him more involved. There's no way they leave that film without saying, maybe they put too much of an emphasis on getting CJ Stroud going. I kind of think that's what it was. Like, it was just weird. Now, Nico Collins looked good as well. I thought CJ Stroud looked fine, but if they're going to try to win football games, which maybe they're not, Dameon Pierce is going to be the reason why. They had some good chunk yard plays on first down, giving him the football. You know, if you set yourself up for 2nd and 6, that's much better than incompletion, right? They need to do more of that, and I think that they will. And so if we look at the props that we are getting for Pierce, we'll see 55 for his rushing yards. And now that game was a blowout, so he wasn't on the field as much. So when we look at this game over and under, the Texans are actually favored by 1 point in this game. So it should be close enough for Dameon Pierce to still get his rushing attempts and all that. And if we look at it just based off of last week, not a bad match. You had Travis Etienne really having a pretty efficient game rushing the football. And I think that's going to occur again. And guys, I'm just going to sort this by yards per carry as well. I think that's probably the best indication of really what we're trying to accomplish here. But albeit, I would say you can attack them via the running back position. And so if we just look at the 9-to-5 cheat sheet now, we will see that Vegas and really the projection data isn't exactly agreeing with that. It is for the rushing yards. You look at the projection data, it actually likes that a little bit better. But we are seeing maybe we get a slight better edge by doing that bet on underdog as opposed to PrizePicks. Okay, so that could be a route that we are going with there, and I don't mind it. But we look at it, they're basically giving him a 50-50. What I kind of find interesting here is kind of this rushing yards prop for CJ Stroud. Projection data 18.3. Both lines have it set at 12.5, but they're giving about a 52% chance to hit. So maybe there's something there. I would say if it's more of a blowout, that'd be a better bet. Let's go ahead and get into the Colts. So with the Colts, we did get some kind of big injury news. Evan Hall, IR, unfortunate for the rookie running back. And then Deion Jackson, looking at him, guys, he really struggled. That was easily his worst NFL game, I would say. Unfortunate timing for him, because now Zach Moss is going to be back, and Zach Moss is, if he's healthy enough, he is going to be their workhorse running back, especially in this game. Houston last year was a really good matchup to target for opposing running backs. And if we look at it like yards per carry wise, not exactly the case last week, but points wise, this is where it is a little bit more difficult, guys. Points wise, it was there again, right? It's just a few of the carries. They had a lot of goal line carries. Let's just put it that way. Justice Hill had a couple of goal line touchdowns. Gus Edwards had a couple of opportunities. J.K. Dobbins had a couple of opportunities. That's why the yards per carry, it's kind of a bad stat because it doesn't really indicate what occurred most of the time. It should be yards per carry, not within 10 yards of the goal line. That should be the stat. And just real quickly, looking at the snaps, like Deion Jackson, guys, he had 70% of the snaps there, okay? And then Jake Funk came in and actually had 18. And I think we might see this kind of flip-flop, maybe 65% for Zach Moss. And I still think Deion Jackson's going to get involved, but he was really probably the reason why they lost the game. Interesting to note, Josh Downs had 79% of the snaps. Michael Pittman basically did not leave the field, 97. Now, once again, the lines are pretty tight for this game, okay? We look at Kylan Granson. He had about 61% of the snaps in a game that I think might be more rush heavy. I don't know. That's just an interesting one that the data is liking the under, because I would probably agree with that. Only about a 52% chance for that to hit. Another one, the projection data slightly likes Anthony Richardson a little bit more for his rushing yards. I don't know. I think we're going to see a lot more Zach Moss than really people are expecting. Yeah, and then from there, just not that much for the Colts, unfortunately. We're just not getting that many props for that. I will say Josh Downs was targeted heavily, and if he's going to be playing as many snaps as he did, you know, maybe over 30.5 receiving yards shouldn't be that hard to do. He only had 3 receptions, and they basically came right away. If he's playing that many snaps again, that's tough to imagine. But yeah, once again, not too much there. All right, so moving down into this next game, we got the Chicago Bears versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, this one is certainly an interesting game theory game. Look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are favored by 2.5 points, which I find to be kind of interesting. I felt Kirk Cousins kind of let the Bucs stay in that game and they were able to win it. I really think Baker Mayfield looked bad. And you guys see that the stuff going around about Baker Mayfield saying that he knew the defensive signal, so he knew what they were running defensively. To me, that's not something I would admit if I was Baker Mayfield, who only threw for 173 passing yards. You knew what the defense, and you couldn't throw for 200 passing yards. Like, come on, dude. The Vikings defense is supposed to be bad as well. Like, I don't know. I feel like this, looking at this line, guys, this is like the first one that stood out to me. I didn't think the Bears were going to be a bad team this year. I also thought the Green Bay Packers were really just getting disrespected for no reason. I thought that they actually improved with the Aaron Rodgers stuff. If you guys have watched this channel, you know my takes on that. Really, that game went as expected, I would say, for the Green Bay Packers. I think they're just a better team than people are giving them credit for. The only real issue that I have is that I like Kyler Gordon. He is out on the IR for the Chicago Bears. Maybe there's something there, but this really feels like you'd be choosing between who do you think is the better quarterback, Justin Fields or Baker Mayfield. Personally, I don't like either of them. Like, if you're betting on this game, probably just don't want to do it, but I could see placing a money line bet on the Bears. I don't think they're as bad as people are giving them credit for. It's just, I don't know. Bears fans are the best because everything is always to the extreme. Like Justin Fields MVP at the start of the season, and now it's like tank for Caleb Williams. It's always to the extreme, so it's always fun there. But yeah, I can see betting that, but let's just look at this game here, seeing if we are getting any good props there. And I want to start off here with just looking at the snap counts. DJ Moore did end up playing 90% of the snaps. Darnell Mooney, 83% of the snaps. Chase Claypool, this is probably going to change, 78. I want to point this out because people that are maybe watching box scores, and I've actually listened to some podcasts that you can tell they didn't watch the game and they only watched the box score because they were hyping up Roschon Johnson, and he looked good. Don't get me wrong. Guys, Khalil Herbert looked good. Deonta Foreman also looked good as well. The reason why Johnson got the most snaps is because the game was a blowout. Like, they really didn't have a chance. You had Greg Olsen. If you guys watched this game, Greg Olsen was like, why aren't they trying to win? Why aren't they hurrying up? I'm like, dude, they're down 30 and they haven't stood a chance this whole game. Like, what are you talking about? It was so weird. But I still think the pecking order is going to be what it was. Khalil Herbert, then Deonta Foreman, then Roschon Johnson. So that's kind of my long way of saying don't get trapped into a Johnson prop until we actually see him be the lead back. But I don't know if we're ever going to get that because I don't know if we're ever going to get a game. We're supposed to get a game where the Bears are close. I just said I think the Bears have a chance to win. So this should be a good indication of that, I guess. But I do really think that DJ Moore is going to get force-fed the football on this one. I just don't see how that doesn't occur. And I really, really do not get this line for Khalil Herbert. It's mind-numbing, honestly. He was their lead back. Once again, I want to emphasize that. That could change this week with how good Johnson looked. I get that. But he did not look bad. Like, this is a weird line to me. Like, he still had over 10 opportunities and 5 targets in the passing game. Like, why would that change? He is definitely their best passing down back. This is one of the first ones that really stands out to me on the slate. Such a low number. And guys, it's not spectacular here. The edge that we are getting, the projected edge that we're getting, 50.2% edge for this over. But you look at the projection data, it's saying about 13.7. I would say that's going to be more correct. I think we're going to see this number rise. But that's really why I wanted to touch on those snap counts because I do think that we are getting a slight edge there. This one for Cole Kmet is definitely interesting. He always plays a bunch of snaps. And if you look at the receiving yards and just kind of the usage for Minnesota last week, it is TJ Hawkinson, so there's a little asterisk there, but 67 receiving yards, third most last week, and 11 receptions to the tight end. If Cole Kmet's going to be playing that much, maybe the Bucs are just, I wouldn't say they're bad. I would say they actually hindered the production for TJ Hawkinson, so probably a skewed stat there. So probably just staying away from the Cole Kmet prop there. So the good news, I would say, last week for maybe a passing prop for Justin Fields is that they really set up the offense for Justin Fields to be an NFL quarterback. The issue was that he failed doing that. Take number 2, we'll see if he can execute that against the Bucs defense. That is still going to be pretty good. I think the Packers defense is pretty good. I think the Bucs defense is pretty good as well. So I don't know. We're probably just staying away from him there. The one that I think the most is going to be DJ Moore. He played the expected snaps. The issue was they didn't target him. I think this is going to be one of those situations where it's kind of the easy correction. Let's get some play designs to maybe DJ Moore instead of Khalil Herbert as well. I do expect him to be able to get over 44.5 receiving yards in this game. Don't love it. I love the Herbert bet a little bit better, but we got 2 pretty decent bets, I would say, here for the Chicago Bears between DJ Moore over receiving yards and Khalil Herbert over receiving yards. And just so you guys know, I am writing that one down so I can come back and use that for the bet of the day. And guys, like, am I wrong? Is that like an overcorrection? I would say to me, it feels like a vast overcorrection in this game. Like, the Bucs were not favored by much. Or they weren't favored to win last week against the Vikings. Chicago Bears were favored against the Packers. Just overcorrection is what I say. Now, if we look at this game, it is fascinating, some of the props that we were getting here. So Rachaad White looked bad looked really bad. I mentioned earlier Josh Kelly looked like a starter in the league. Yeah, if he was on the Bucs, he would be their starter. It's pretty easy to say that, I would say. White, however, and this is where I find it interesting here. He does get a matchup with the Chicago Bears, the matchup where you had Aaron Jones just go off. I kind of expect him to have a better game. Just how much better is the question. We could see really the best prop for the Bucs would actually be betting the under receiving yards for White. It's up to you guys what you want to do there. Chris Godwin, I just want to point out the difference in the projected receiving yards there. Maybe a slight edge there. We are seeing that the over is slightly favored. You know, if you are searching for a bet, if you guys think that Chicago Bears defense is going to be bad, I think that was more Matt LaFleur last week. But Chris Godwin, I'd probably, if we were getting receptions prop, I'd probably want to do that, but we're not. And then, yeah, I'm just not touching Baker Mayfield. I think he's bad. I would say the projection is definitely too egregious there, too high. I'm not touching. All right, so now moving on to the next game, we got the Las Vegas Raiders versus the Buffalo Bills, a game that is one of the highest projected blowouts of the week. 8 points there. And so with that, we could potentially be doing some game theory stuff. Last week with Washington, we saw that they were 7-point favorites. Okay. What did that result in me wanting to do? Hammer Brian Robinson for over rushing attempts because it just didn't make sense with how the game was supposed to go. We saw that Robinson basically averaged 20 rushing attempts in games that they won. That was a weird one. So I'm hoping we can get a prop like that in this game. Now, I do think it's worth pointing out that Jacoby Myers currently in concussion protocol. He's probably not going to play. A lot of people might be finding themselves trying to end up on Hunter Renfrow, but I think it's going to end up being Wilkerson. He was basically brought in to be Jacoby Myers' backup. He fits the role a little bit better than Hunter Renfrow. It's just he is more similar to Jacoby Myers than Hunter Renfrow is. So it would make more sense for it to be him. So if we do get a prop on him, I would like that a lot. And maybe if we get a prop on Hunter Renfrow, maybe we bet the under there. And guys, the snap count does somewhat back that up a little bit. Like Hunter Renfrow 22% of the snaps, Wilkerson 22% of the snaps. But I would say he would take the Jacoby Myers snaps. Now, Josh Jacobs was not that efficient as a runner, but he still had the same bounce. I would say that's more of just a good rush defense that he went up against, which is surprising to say, but it was. And so now we look at it like this might actually be a good matchup going against the Buffalo Bills. It was last week. Breece Hall, I mean, don't get me wrong, Breece Hall looked good, but he also looked bad. Conditioning wise, he should have scored on his touchdown. Now I know Garrett Wilson on that almost touchdown was celebrating too early, and if he just makes a block, Breece Hall does score. But those plays were there. Like most running backs are making big plays on a lot of those plays for Breece Hall. A lot of running backs probably do mess them up as well, don't get me wrong, but they were just wide open lanes. And like, come on, it's the New York Jets, especially with Zach Wilson. Like there's not much that you need to do. You need to focus on the run. So maybe the Bills are just a little bit poor against the run. Like that could be a thing. And so maybe this line that we are getting for him is one that we want to go with. Now, I would honestly say it's a better bet on the sports books, where the average sportsbook line is at 67.7. Obviously, you can find the different sportsbooks out there, and it's definitely a better bet on underdog for the over there. And that's where I'd be placing that bet, because I just think that, you know, he looked the same. He had the snap share that we would want, just wasn't exactly there for him. And yeah, personally for me, I know this is a tight line here, but I might actually be favoring the over as well. That Bills defense just kind of lackluster. The Raiders passing game was a little bit better than I thought. And like I said, I think Wilkerson, if Jacoby Myers is out, is going to be able to fill in fine. Now, that being said, I could see your argument being like, all right, they're going from, you know, a pretty good NFL receiver in Jacoby Myers to, I would say, a good replacement player in Wilkerson, but obviously not as good, or else you'd be on the field. So then you really just had Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs out there. I get it. And now we look at the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, they're going to be favored to win by 8 points. Okay, so maybe we can find some correlated bets to go with that. And if we look at the matchup that James Cook gets, we actually do see a lot of receptions did go to the running back. Once again, I think that was more of a situation of the game with Denver really just having Cortland Sutton out there and just a bunch of guys that maybe shouldn't be getting a lot of playing time elsewhere, which should tell you everything you need to know about how they view Marvin Mims as a talent. If Brennan Johnson and LJ Humphrey are getting playing time over him, so that's interesting there. But they did end up just kind of getting the ball to the running backs, Javonte Williams, Samaje Perine. So I don't know if there's that much to take away from. I was hoping maybe we could, you know, find a narrative of like a receiving prop for James Cook, but we're not. Now, quarterback wise, like I do think that this is going to be a good matchup for Josh Allen. Russell Wilson had an extremely efficient day throwing the football, at least in the first half as well. 2 touchdowns, only 177 passing yards, but it looked good. And obviously you get Josh Allen now with Diggs, with that offense. I do think he's going to be able to have a bounce back game. We have seen him be able to bounce back fine in the past, so I'm not too worried about it. Now, once again, guys, we are just not getting that many favorable lines. I have added something in there for fantasy score, hoping that's going to end up being a big edge come Sunday. And I'll probably do a shorter, quicker video on Sunday of just my best bets. This is obviously the deep dive. So just taking a look at the Bills snap counts, Dawson Knox, 84% of the snaps. To me, I wasn't too shocked about that. I was actually more shocked that Dalton Kincaid actually ended up playing almost 80% of the snaps as well. Okay, I thought it'd be closer to like 90 for maybe not 90. I think Dawson Knox snaps. That one as expected. I just didn't think the rookie would be that involved that fast. I was maybe thinking 60 to 65 max. They were the passing weapons there. Like it was Diggs and then those two. Gabe Davis kind of an afterthought. And actually they really tried to get Deontay Hardy involved when he was on the field. He only played in 22% of the snaps. I'm worried that we might get some lines for him because of the name value that he had in that game. And people are going to get like trapped into that. Worth calling out James Cook, 60% of the snaps. Could be something there. But like I said, not yet with the props that we have available. And really for me, guys, not much there as well in terms of props. Like I would say this has a good chance to be a push, the punts prop. But yeah, we're not really touching that, right? All right, so now we're going to head and move on into the next game. My personal favorite game to really attack. I do think we have the best stacking opportunities that we're going to get in this game. Kansas City Chiefs versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now we look at this game, and the biggest news that we are waiting on is Travis Kelce. If Travis Kelce sits, which I don't think he's going to, then Noah Gray, maybe someone that we're looking at. He was kind of their number one passing weapon in that game, unfortunately, for the Kansas City Chiefs. And then for the Jaguars, a bunch of injury news, but nothing like too crazy in terms of like changing the game. 51.1 for an over and under. The Jaguars are 3.5 dogs, which I find interesting there. Let's take a peek at the Kansas City Chiefs snap counts. Just looking at it. Noah Gray, 87.7% of the snaps. Now, I want to call that out, but I also want to call out Blake Bell had 40% of the snaps. I think there's a good chance that we actually see Noah Gray, just based off of this indication of Blake Bell, I actually think we might see Noah Gray get like over 50% of the snaps on average throughout the season. It is worth calling out Sky Moore was out there, getting his cardio in the Thursday night football game. MVS was pretty impressive, did play in 63% of the snaps. Isaiah Pacheco, almost 50% of the snaps, not much there. Richie James was the receiver number 3, which we kind of thought could happen. And then obviously Kadarius Toney had a rough game, but like the design plays were there for him. Like 5 targets on 25% of the snaps, had a play that was designed for him to score a touchdown on. He didn't look healthy, but I kind of find that interesting. That's a situation to monitor for season-long leagues. Looking at the props that we were getting thus far for Patrick Mahomes, that's really all we're going to get until Travis Kelce is confirmed in or out, and then we'll start getting the receiving props and probably Pacheco. Interesting here, the projection data actually doesn't like it, so the under is slightly being favored here. Basically a 50-50 split there. This is much more one of those situations where you could probably do a game stack though, where let's say you think this game is going to be high scoring, you think there's going to be a lot of passing attempts, then you could bet accordingly like that. And then you're probably doing Trevor Lawrence over passing yards. And that's actually one that I like a little bit better. Once again, looking at the projection data, slightly favoring the over there. A little bit better bet on PrizePicks if you're looking for the over there. Not a big percentage here, 51% edge, not huge, obviously. And I will say Travis Etienne was actually highly impressive to me rushing the football, but I feel like I need to look at the snap counts here. So yes, for Jacksonville, one of the surprising things in that game was Zay Jones playing 88% of the snaps, more than Calvin Ridley. And then also another one that I found interesting, Etienne played in 80% of the snaps. I thought it'd be much closer of a split. Tank Bigsby only played in 21.4% of the snaps. I found that extremely interesting. So now we'll see that this matchup against the Chiefs for Travis Etienne, not terrible, but look at the rushing yards total. Like we look at the rushing yards total, a little bit better than expected. Yards per carry, not exactly. But that was a game in which David Montgomery pretty much was able to do what David Montgomery does, and Gibbs looked good doing what he was expected to do as well. So I might like the Travis Etienne over rushing yards there. I know the data just said probably not, but maybe you guys are going through your sports books and you're saying, yeah, I agree. I like that prop bet. I like the over. You can find a way to do that. And he was heavily involved. Maybe we can get a total yards prop for Travis Etienne, and that would be the better route to go. Maybe a combo prop, because I think he's going to be involved. 23 opportunities in that game. That was crazy. And the amount of snaps I thought was crazy. Now he'd look super good doing that. And maybe as the year goes on, they figure they shouldn't be doing that. But until they do, let's just roll with Travis Etienne. I like the over rushing yards here. Once again, better bet on the sportsbook. I understand this is not a good EV bet for PrizePicks, but this is one I'm writing down, and I'm going to put like an asterisk next to it. Combination. If we can get the receiving and rushing yards, I like that a little bit better. Like like for example purposes, how many running backs, let's just look at the rushing yards. How many running backs in the league that are going to get 18 carries are going to have their rushing prop at 58.5 in a maybe decent matchup? Not that many. I mean, David Montgomery there, maybe Kenneth Walker, Josh Jacobs, we can see is at 68. Heck, James Conner at 63.5. Like, you guys are kind of getting what I'm putting down here. Like, it shouldn't take that much more. Now, when we look at Zay Jones, guys, if he's going to be playing 88% of snaps in this game that is expected to be that high scoring, yeah, he should be able to crush this over as well. I look at Calvin Ridley. I felt like this is one of my favorite props last week. I felt like Trevor Lawrence definitely got a little bit too much tunnel vision on him, but that's obviously not a bad thing there. And then Evan Ingram, just for what it's worth, I feel like this could be a little bit too trappy. Now, I will say, did still play 70% of the snaps, and also he had some big plays available that Lawrence missed him on. Like I said, had a little bit too much tunnel vision with Calvin Ridley. If you are trying to game stack this game, let's say you're doing Trevor Lawrence over passing yards, pair it up with Ingram and Zay Jones. But personally, I think my favorite bet in this game would actually be ETN over rushing yards. All right, moving on into the next game. Here we got the Baltimore Ravens versus the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are 3.3 favorites on average. The game total is going to be 46.2, so expected to be kind of a higher scoring game. I'm going to tell you guys right now, I don't think we're going to get that many awesome bets in this game. I think we're going to get some tight lines, but let's go and take a peek. And just for what it's worth, guys, until we get confirmation that Mark Andrews is going to be active in this game, then we're not going to get any receiving props. And I just saw this news for Keaton Mitchell. Is this something that just happened, or did I just miss this news? I guess I just missed this news. Wow. Interesting there. So, wow. Yeah, looking at it, guys, that's makes the running back room more interesting. It might actually be Melvin Gordon. I could see Melvin Gordon really being more heavily involved than people thought. Justice Hill, if we got like a receiving prop, he is going to be the third down back, most likely. And I would say maybe we're looking at some sort of receiving prop. But yeah, as it sits right now, the only props that we are getting are looking at Lamar Jackson. The unders are being favored there, just as an FYI. Then we look at Cincinnati. We are getting a lot more props there as well for them. Personally, I don't mind T. Higgins for over his. Obviously, the data is saying it's about a 50-50 split here. But I was watching that game. The yards were there for T. Higgins. Joe Burrow just couldn't throw the football in the wet conditions. So not a terrible one there. But we do see Joe Mixon. That data actually likes Joe Mixon. I would say 51%. That's for over his rushing yards at 53.4. We can see we got a slight edge there over underdog. And also projected to get 59.8. Maybe there's something there. We look at the matchup, though. It's not exactly one that shouts, yeah, let's go ahead and attack that one. So I hate to say, guys, but let's just move on. I don't have a good feel for that game, so let's move on to this next game. Arizona Cardinals versus the New York Giants. And I find this kind of crazy. The Giants only favored by 4.5 points now after, just having a terrible game. Let's be honest. That was just a bad game for them. Got bad right away. It was bad from the start. Looking at both teams, they are both pretty banged up. We know that. Darren Waller currently questionable. What I'm interested in is if Wendell Robinson returns, how will he look? I want to see how he looks and getting a few targets, like 5 targets. If he can get 5 targets, it might not be this game, but I want to see 5 targets out of him just to see how he looks, because he looked really good last year in the limited amount of playing time that he got. I mean, that team between Tony, between Sterling Shepard and him, it's like, man, they cannot stay healthy. It's interesting that they went ahead and got Darren Waller, who also struggles with the injury. Guys, this might sound weird, but I left the film being pretty impressed by the Cardinals offense. And isn't it funny how expectations work like that? I thought they were just going to be bad. Okay. They had some really big pop plays, a couple of plays, big plays called back because of penalties, but look at the snap counts. This was the most shocking thing really last week. I think about all the snap count. There was rumblings going around the league that Michael Wilson was going to be involved pretty much right away for the Cardinals. I didn't believe it because they have Rondale Moore there, because they have Marquise Brown there, because they have Greg Dortch there. Zach Pasquale, not a terrible receiver as well. But no, Michael Wilson, 90.3% of the snap. That's crazy. And now he wasn't able to do much with it, but for what it's worth, DFS-wise, min price, that is crazy. He had 4 targets. I'm not sure we're going to get any props on him. If we do, maybe that's the one you're looking at, because if he is getting that many, that's crazy, because they really force-fed Zach Ertz the ball, and it's just tough to see them doing that again. 10 targets, and look at the efficiency there, very low. I was actually pretty impressed with James Conner. He looked like the same James Conner that we always see. Was limited in practice. I don't think we need to worry about that. I think this is going to be the norm. I think the matchup though with the Giants is what we would expect as well. I think it's going to be the same as Washington. I know they just got tore up by Dallas, but that was mostly due to New York Giants offense being terrible. And now when we go ahead and look at the snap counts for the New York Giants, we can see that the snaps were very spread out. I was actually very shocked at how spread out they were. Darren Waller only played in 54% of the snaps, while Daniel Bellinger actually played in 62% of the snaps. And then, yeah, just everything was really spread out. Lawrence Cager, the former receiver turned tight end, had a decent amount of playing time. Obviously, that was due to it being a blowout. Like, really, these guys at the end of the list because it was a blowout. So let's go ahead and take a peek at the props that we are getting for this game. If Darius Slayton's going to be playing that much, and really all these guys, like, these are all kind of low receiving yards. And even for Daniel Jones, like a very low yardage total for him as well. I thought the Arizona Cardinals defense actually didn't look bad. I was actually really shocked at how actually good they looked. Really, the whole team. They probably should, if they had a good quarterback, they probably win that game. That being said, the defensive adjustments can change and whatnot. Like your game planning for that type of quarterback. I get it. I think we could, these are low numbers, right? I think we could have the potential to do a stacking opportunity. Maybe Daniel Jones, maybe Paris Campbell, who, with Darius Slayton had about the same amount of snaps. So that number for Paris Campbell just seems to be a little bit too low. And yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, only 4 targets for him last week. And I think that's why we're getting the low number for him. Whereas Darius Slayton, I guess, was a little bit more effective. But like, this team was just trash last week. Now we look at the Cardinals. Really, the only props that we are getting are for James Conner there. You look at the projection data, it doesn't like James Conner as much. Just because they're probably expecting him to play from behind. So, really you could maybe look at the over receiving yards there if you are looking for a bet. Doesn't feel like one I really want to touch too much. All right, guys, we had 3 more games here. I do just want to say, if you guys are still watching this video, obviously you enjoy the content, make sure to give a like. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure to give a subscribe. I've been showing you guys a bunch of different tools here as well. I'm showing you guys the 9-to-5 cheat sheet. The link to that is going to be in the description below. It's just $10 a month. And I've also been showing you guys the ODDSJAM sportsbook view. They have a bunch of other betting tools available. I have partnered with them just to give you guys the best information possible each and every week. A link for you guys to sign up for those tools as well to get access to those is available in the description below. Use the promo code 9-to-5, and then obviously the 9-to-5 underdog promo code popping up right there. Take advantage of that there as well. All right, and so now getting into this next game, we got the Niners versus the Rams. This is actually 2 teams that really shocked a lot of people. Okay, right? Niners looked really good, and the Rams look pretty good. I would say a lot of that is due to really just Matthew Stafford lighting it up. I mean, Matthew Stafford had a good game, and Sean McVay, albeit, had a good game there as well. I'm very interested how the Niners look in this game because everything went right for them in the opener. It's not always going to be like that, right? But no, Purdy looked good. It's a fun game. I don't know. I feel like that number 7.5 might actually be a little bit too high there for the Niners. Divisional matchup, they seem to always kind of play each other tough, and not last year, but just interesting. Low point total as well, I would say. I thought this one would have a chance to be the highest scoring game just with how good the Rams offense looked. And guys, how about it? Puka Nacua, right? Let's go ahead, pat on the back there. And also, if you guys were paying attention to my content during the preseason, I had been talking down Cam Akers a lot. I was actually talking Ryan Rivers up the most. Just I liked the talent they displayed during the preseason, but I was like, it's probably Kyren Williams is the player that we want to be going out and getting in drafts just because of the ADP and just because Akers sucks and they like Kyren Williams. We saw that happen. We look at the snap counts, guys. Some people are going to be surprised at the snap counts for Kyren Williams. I was not. I'm like, all right, this came a little bit too soon, or sooner than expected, I would say, but not really shocking. Now, I will say Cam Akers closed out that game, okay? He closed out that game. At the start of the game, there was just no running room for Cam Akers, where there was for Kyren Williams. Okay, and that just might have been one of those situations where they rode with the hot hand, even though the hot hand of Kyren Williams was really just there because the play was there. Now, don't get me wrong, I like Kyren Williams more. He was more impressive. He looked better, but they both kind of Cam Akers got what was there for him, whereas Kyren Williams was able to get a few extra yards here. Much more of a tough-nosed running back, and obviously he's going to be their pass-catching back. Like DFS-wise, maybe someone you're looking at. Puka Nacua obviously was heavily targeted. 15 targets, had a really good game. Really good call for me for the min-price receiver play. Hopefully people are able to take advantage of that DFS-wise. That does make it more difficult, I would say, this week. Because Van Jefferson should have had a touchdown there as well. Dropped it. Played in 90% of the snaps. Tyler Higbee playing 90% of the snaps. And so I could see some of the props that we have available potentially be some like trap bets that we have. Now, looking at Tyler Higbee, this is going to be a little bit more difficult of a matchup, obviously, than it was for him last week. playing the 49ers. And if we look at it right now, this is going to be one of our best EV bets available. If we are making a bet of the day as it sits right now on Thursday, this is one that I think we'd be looking at. We can see why. And this is probably something that will get adjusted, don't get me wrong. But the sportsbook have it set at 41.5. The projection data about 44.1. But yeah, we can see why the under for him is probably the way to go. And then guys, if the game total is wrong, and I'm not saying it is going to be wrong, but it is early on the season. Vegas is not sharp then. This yards total does seem to be a little bit low, I think, for Matthew Stafford. Last week obviously lit it up, and he lit it up against a defense that he wasn't exactly supposed to do that against. If they're playing from behind, like Vegas is thinking, I actually don't mind Stafford. Like, even passing attempts, this one seems to be strange to me. You kind of expect him to have to throw the football a bunch if they're going to be losing by a touchdown, not touching rushing yards. Sorry, I had the pass plus rush pulled up. You'd want to do the 28.5 for the pass. That's just an interesting one to me. I don't know. I feel like the Rams they're kind of being disrespected here. And so really, this pass total seems to be really strange to me for the passing attempt. And for what it's worth, guys, if we get a Van Jefferson prop that is lower than Puka and maybe even Tutu Atwell, take advantage of that, okay? He's just going to be playing a bunch of snaps, and I'm not saying that he's going to produce more than them, but I'm saying like the potential, the likelihood of him at least having a similar game should be there. Like a lot of the production that Puka had and Tutu had, I felt were based off a scheme. Now, a little bit different with Puka, like half of his production was just them, Matthew Stafford, forcing the football to him. But you could, like, based off of the design plays, they're looking for stuff really over the middle. And the one design, I shouldn't say design play, but the one big play that was there for Van Jefferson that should have been a touchdown, he dropped. All right, so 2 more games here, guys. Going to get into the New York Jets versus the Dallas Cowboys, a game that, what do we do here? Almost 9-point favorites there for the Dallas Cowboys. Very interesting to me. Like, obviously the Dallas Cowboys looked really good last week, but let's be honest, that was more a case of the New York Giants just not showing up rather than the Dallas Cowboys showing up. I think I'd bet that. If you find a sports book that is giving you 9.5 for DraftKings, FanDuel, take advantage. I think they cover. Now, if they don't, it's going to be because Zach Wilson had freaking pick 6, maybe a fumble 6. I get that. And maybe you can bet a prop based off of that. That number just seems to be too high. Like, that defense was pretty darn good, right? And they're going to be able to design their game plan a little bit more towards Zach Wilson's skill set. I do think we're going to see a couple of rushes there. So I feel like it's a little bit too high. Now, obviously the news that we're waiting on is Breece Hall, or not waiting on. He's expected to play, but I guess the news would be how much is he going to play? Is he going to play a little bit more? When we look at those snap counts, he only played in 31.5% of the snaps. That is not a high snap total. Dalvin Cook ended up playing 50% of the snaps. And then we look at the rest of the snaps. CJ Uzomah is actually a little bit shocking to me there. Alan Lazard played what we would expect him to play. And then Garrett Wilson, 92% of the snaps there. And so when we look at it, guys, we are getting some low stuff there for Zach Wilson. Projection data isn't in there just yet for rushing yards. I don't know. I kind of, like, based off of the preseason where he was a little bit more spry, I could see them designing a couple of runs his way. Now, we can see here, this is one of the bets in which probably one of the best percent bets that we actually got for the under here. So I probably don't want to touch that. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if he does get more rushing yards. Garrett Wilson, I don't see how they don't get him more targets. Okay. He needs to get targeted more. If that prop becomes available, that's something I'm probably looking at. But all in all, based off of the stuff we have available right now, I'm probably not touching it. Then obviously, if the Dallas Cowboys are actually going to be up by that much, if we get like a rushing attempts prop for Tony Pollard and it's something that's reasonable, I think we could bet the over there. I think I kind of like that. Rushing yards, we do see the projection data does like rushing yards there a little bit more for Dak Prescott. Do you think in a game where they're that heavily favored that Tony Pollard can score a touchdown? I would say probably. CeeDee Lamb for over 70 receiving yards, maybe. Diggs did get his last week, which was kind of shocking to me. If he doesn't get it, obviously there's a lot of defensive attention to him. We're not getting any Brendan Cooks props, but maybe that. Or Jake Ferguson, who really had a rough game. But he had the workload that I thought he would have. A lot of targets, a lot of snaps his way. So maybe we could get a Jake Ferguson prop going in there as well. All right, take a deep breath here. The last game on this preview, this deep dive here, is going to be Washington versus Denver. Kind of an ugly game. I did think Javonte Williams looked really good. Injury news-wise, though, Greg Dulcich, who is expected to be their Joker, kind of like Alvin Kamara-esque type role, actually, is what we kind of heard. He's out. Most likely. Doubtful hamstring injury. He left the game last week. Adam Troutman ended up getting a lot of playing time, actually. On the Washington Commanders side, another week for Terry McLaurin to be healthy. That's going to be good. Curtis Samuel currently has a hip injury. I'm expecting him to play, so I think we can operate under that assumption there as well. Now, what I find interesting in this game is that Denver is going to be favored by 3.5 points. So, with that, I do think Brian Robinson's workload is going to heavily correlate with that. But he did look good. He had a couple of good passes or receptions in the passing game. So Antonio Gibson had a fumble. That's a problem that he keeps having. And obviously you're going to start losing playing time when you do that. We look at the snap counts for them. Kind of the players that you would expect to have that much playing time got that much playing time. The one big surprise to me was Logan Thomas getting 81% of the snaps. I thought we'd actually see a little bit more Cole Turner. He only played in 14% of the snaps. Yeah, Antonio Gibson, 35, right? Brian Robinson, 60. Much more the focal point, but that's because they were up. So looking at it, guys, again, we are seeing a lot of the unders actually being currently favored. Now, I will say this is a low passing yardage total for Sam Howell. Given the big discrepancy that we have between the projection data and the sportsbooks data, I actually don't mind this. Denver's defense did look fine. I thought they looked good, but I don't mind the idea of maybe running out a stack here with both Terry and Jahan Dotson for their over receiving yards. That would actually be one of my more favorite stacks just because it's a low number. It's kind of a push matchup. We did see him throw the ball 31 times against the Cardinals defense. That just looked better than I think people expected. And if they are playing from behind a little bit, then I think there's something there. And now flipping it over to the Denver Broncos. Not much there. I do think Russell Wilson looked good. I do feel like this passing yards total is actually probably a little bit too high. If Jerry Jeudy is out, who's currently questionable, I would also say that this number is too high. Okay, I would actually be betting the under there. That being said, I was really shocked at how little Russell Wilson actually rushed the football. I thought he would be a little bit more involved there. We see the prop line difference there between Underdog and PrizePicks. You could potentially bet the over there on Underdog. All right, guys, so this is going to be my bet of the day here. And so looking at it, or bet of the week, I guess, the issue that I have, guys, is last week a lot of my favorite props ended up getting bumped. And we actually saw that for this Thursday night football game. I'm recording this before that. Basically, all of them got bumped, which is unfortunate. Bumped up in a good way, like they should hit. Knock on wood there. But we can't control that. So looking at like Khalil Herbert, I do think that, kind of the snap counts were that way because the game was a blowout and a blowout pretty fast. Even if he's still playing about 40% of the snaps, there was a lot of targets his way. And maybe they do adjust their offensive game plan, but as it sits right now, I'm going based off of what we saw, and I think Khalil Herbert will still be involved. Looking at Travis Etienne, he was just super impressive. 18 rushing attempts. I want to do a rush and receiving yards total. If we get that, we don't have that right now. Once again, recording on Thursday. Tyler Higbee, just matchup based. I was actually a little bit surprised at last year how uninvolved he was in the offense. Now with Stafford there, I just think he likes throwing Higbee the ball. This is probably the one I like the least. They did just give us this Keenan Allen receptions prop. Guys, if Austin Eckler sits, I actually like this one a little bit more. Again, with Justin Herbert at the quarterback, when Keenan Allen's been healthy and played a full game, he averages 10 targets per game. And then Tony Pollard, just game script wise, not a terrible one. These two right here would probably be the ones I would take off if you guys are looking for a smaller slip. I want to give you guys 5, just make it worth your time. That's going to be all for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to give a like and subscribe. Make sure to click those links in the descriptions below. That helps me. And if you guys want access to those cheat sheets, take advantage of that. Just $10 a month. All right, let's have a good slate. And as always, let's keep cashing.